We ended last week of speaking about Jeremiah and his attitude that he had dealing with difficulties. And we won't rehash all of that, but one of the instructive things that I see, and just this one passage in chapter 20, we'll concentrate upon to kind of bring us into today's class. That the difficult times, he talks to God how bad it is. You know, my familiar friends, the people that want me to fail in my prophetic work, they don't like what he's saying, and they wish him harm and difficulties. And we'll see that he's put in stocks. If we get to that far this evening, they want to kill him. And what he does, we could be vindictive. We could have our own attitude. I want something bad to happen to these people. And he speaks plainly to God of how bad he feels. But look at verse 12, where I think this is the attitude that we can have as Christians, though we might not go as far as he does. And we'll explain that in a moment. But verse 12 says, "But O Jehovah of hosts, thou that triest the righteous," he knows he's righteous. He's being tested. "Seest the heart and the mind. Let me see thy vengeance on them, for unto thee have I revealed my cause." It's not my vengeance. I like to get even with those naysayers. Let me see God's vengeance. I know I'm being tested. I'm being tried. I think it's a healthy attitude that we don't have to just take the abuse and absorb it like a sponge and make us bitter. Prayer is a point of release. Talking to God. God, you have it. And then Paul tells us as Christians that we're not to take vengeance in our own hands, but give it over to the vengeance of the Lord. I will take vengeance, saith the Lord. He will do that. And he'll take care of that. What's added is that we tie in chapter 18, and if God brings his judgment upon the people, there'll be children destroyed. There'll be young women that don't have their husbands after tomorrow's fight. They will be childless. They will go through all sorts of difficulties, and Jeremiah pours that forth and says to the things, let not their sin be taken away. And the point is, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. If they're going to continue in their sinful attitude, do not forgive them because they're not repenting. And so there's a lot of room there, but you might not want to say that. I hope you go childless. I hope all horrible things happen to you, because in 1 Peter 2 and verse 1, the things we're to put away and our receiving the gospel, one of them is called malice. Malice is wishing evil upon people. That's not the heart of a Christian. But Jeremiah is not necessarily contradicting that when he said, this is what's going to happen to them, and God, so be it. If they're not going to turn away, it's right. It's his judicial wrath that's coming upon them. He prays for it. Let me see thy vengeance upon them, and that's the character that it will be like. But chapter 18, verse 22, he says, "Let a cry be heard from their houses when thou shalt bring a troop suddenly upon them. For they digged a pit to take me, and hid snares for me. Yet Jehovah, thou knowest all their counsel against me to slay me. Forgive not their iniquity." And Jesus said, forgive them, for they know not what to do. Stephen says, lay not this sin to their charge. Neither blot out their sin from thy sight. Let them be overthrown. Well, let not their sin, he says, be forgiven, because they're not going to repent. So I put that in hard-heartedness of the people. He just stated what's going to happen to them. Let me see thy vengeance upon them. This is what's going to happen to them. Not that he is the one that is not going to be Christian-like. But as a Christian, that's something I wouldn't wish on my enemy. And yet some Christians wish that upon their enemy. And I think that there's a line to be drawn, because I don't want to have any wickedness. Means malice in Peter, and that means wishing things come upon them, but I don't ask God to forgive people that don't repent. I may ask God to help them come to the point of repentance. So there's nothing unbiblical or unjust or outside the character of God of what Jeremiah is praying for. He's praying, let me see thy vengeance. I've given you my cause. And I don't want you to have any mercy on unforgiven people in that state. Because God's just, and he's going to bring a just judgment upon them. But we, in looking at Stephen and Jesus, there's a sense that we want them to be forgiven, and we express that in our prayers, not like Jeremiah does in chapter 18. And you may, so both sides of that, and you may prefer, I don't think I want to say that, and I would understand that. But please understand, when God brings judgment upon Jerusalem, as we'll see tonight, famine, pestilence, and the sword. And that's going against the children. It's going against the young men. It's going to be pestilence. They're going to eat their children. They're going to do gross things, because that's the nature of war. And God uses nations to take down nations. But we want people to be saved for heaven. And I don't want something to happen to innocent children because of I've got a battle with their daddy or about a battle with their mother. And so I kind of draw the lines there. And you can draw them where you are, but those two passages are something to make you think about. Can I express this very terms that Jeremiah makes as a Christian, that he makes as a prophet who's righteous and he's being tested, and all he's doing, I'm not wanting my vengeance. I don't want to get even, God, but I know what you will do with them. Take care of it. And may your wrath, we know it's just, even though it will come in pictures like that, let it happen. Let it happen. And that's the way Jeremiah leaves it. I think it's a very healthy thing to talk to God how you feel and leave it to his vengeance.
And we pray that the mouths of false teachers be stopped.
Yes. I don't wish any malice upon them. I want them to stop their teaching. I think that's true.
Not a miraculous thing, but it's a problem.
Right. And that can happen. And we can express it. I want that to stop. I want this to happen. But, bringing in families and mothers and daddies. But that's what happened in war among nations. And he's just painting that picture that he knows that will be the case. And may it stay there if they're not going to change their heart. And we're seeing just one prophecy right after another they're ignoring. And so there's where he is. All right, any comments or questions you might have on that? That's kind of where we stopped in the middle of that. So let's go to question number 17, because throughout the book of Jeremiah, sometimes he say, I don't want you to be married, and you're going to be married. It's going to teach you certain things. We'll talk about figs, and we're going to talk about a broken bottle. And the latter part of Jeremiah, the 19th chapter, thou shalt break the bottle in the sight of men that go with thee. What was the broken jar symbolic of? In Jeremiah 19, beginning with verse 10. What's that? Yeah, city Jerusalem, right? And Jerusalem will be taken down. So break the people, he says in verse 11. And this city, which is Jerusalem. Remember, he's from Ananoth, which is about 3 miles northeast of Jerusalem. But he's dealing with the people there. He says that they cannot be made whole again. This city, as one breaketh a potter's vessel, that cannot be made whole again. They got to the point, there's no remedy, but just judgment upon them and upon the city. So break that potter's bottle. And it's the idea of breaking the people in this city. Notice what he says in verse 11. They shall bury Topheth. Now that's the city. So we can talk about Jerusalem, but notice when he at the end of this chapter, when Jeremiah comes back from from Topheth. Verse 14, then came Jeremiah from Topheth, whither Jehovah has sent him. So he sends them to a city. It's right near Jerusalem, and that very well could be the city that's there, but I think he's talking about Jerusalem. Because what does Topheth, what does that word mean in the Hebrew language? And it's southeast, it's kind of south of Jerusalem. Let's just make it south of Jerusalem. And if I said it is a place, it is a fireplace. It is a place where burning fire takes place. What comes to your mind? South of Jerusalem. Valley of Hinnom, Gehenna, which we know is used by God to talk about hell. Not Hades, but hell, the eternal place of punishment for the wicked in the last day. This is where they're burning their children to their idols of Baal. And they would be out there, and that's why the Valley of Hinnom, that's why Gehenna has its place. It became a place where they would burn their trash. But in Jeremiah's day, and some of the kings, someone went to Molech. But here it's just the idols around them of Baal. It's a burning place. It is a fireplace. And what they're doing on top of their houses, they are offering their sacrifice unto their gods, and they're pouring out the drink offering to their gods, and they're offering up their children in Topheth, which is the idea of burning coal, burning fire, and that's what they're doing. I think its name is symbolical of that. But he told him, "You go to Topheth, and now when you're returning, I want you to preach some more about this, because we see some more about this broken bottle in an illustration. Look in chapter 20, verses 1 through 6. Now, Pashur, the son of Immer, the priest, who was chief officer in the house of Jehovah. Where's the house of Jehovah? It's a temple. He's a priest in Jerusalem. And he heard Jeremiah prophesying these things. Then Pashur smote Jeremiah the prophet, put him in stocks that were in the upper gate of Benjamin, which was in the house of Jehovah. And it came to pass on the morrow that Pashur brought forth Jeremiah out of the stocks. Then Jeremiah got to speak to him. And he said, Jehovah hath not called thy name Pashur, but Magar-Missabib. So, what do you think the word Pashur means? It means freedom. And now it's going to be changed to the name Magar-Missabib, which says, because there shall be no place else. You're going into captivity. Your name may be that, and so we're going to see this name. It's a name given among those who are free. Chapter 21, Pashur the son of Malchiah. That's not the same one. Different sons. But they had the name. And it was the name of freedom. And Jeremiah said, your name means that, but I'm going to tell you, there's no place else you're going to go, because the bottle is being broken. And here's an example where they put him in stocks, bring him out, and they want to denounce him, and that's why he's talking to God about God's vengeance to come upon them. But he says that there in verse 4, behold, I will make thee a terror to thyself and to all thy friends, and they shall fall by the sword by their enemies. Thine eyes shall behold it, and I will give all Judah in the hand of the king of what? King Babylon. And he shall carry them captive to Babylon, and shall slay them with the sword. Again, judgment is going to come upon the children of Israel. And we're being introduced, we'll see this as we get into chapter 21, dealing with the last 5 kings of Judah. Josiah, did he have some reform? When Josiah died, they would put in people as sons, and Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, and 2 of them only last 3 months. Jehoiakim, and then the last, Mattaniah, whose name is changed to Zedekiah, they last 11 years. And then Babylon it comes to finally destroy them. So you begin to have in these kings of like Jehoiakim and Zedekiah, they got 11 years reign. The other two are just 3 months. They're just little placeholders until Pharaoh Necho took care of the first one. And then Nebuchadnezzar begins to send out the people from other areas to just do war, just cripple them. They got to deal with this battle from some Chaldeans here and other people that Babylon ruled over, just crippling them, and they take care of them. Finally, Zedekiah is the one in 586, it's the end of his reign. And add 11 years to that, it's 597, that's when they took care of the other king and put Zedekiah in. So you can become familiar with those last four kings, and Josiah was a pretty good king, but the others did that which was evil, and they don't change. And what he said, the bottle's going to be broken. And he's warning them. So when he warns them about that, they put him in stocks. And they're ridiculing him. That's what we've seen here in chapter 20, beginning with verse 7, of those things that are happening. Moreover, verse 5, I will give all the riches of this city. That's why I'm thinking this city is not Topheth, smart, but Jerusalem, the things of the temple, all the gains thereof and all the precious things thereof will I give the treasures of the kings of Judah. Will I give it in the hand of their enemies, and they shall make them a prey. See, I want to get spoil out of them. We prayed upon them. I'll make them a prey because they're going to give us the riches. We're going to plunder them. They're the prey. And carry them to Babylon. And thou, Pashur, and all that dwell in thy house shall go into captivity. And thou shalt come to Babylon, and there shalt thou die, and there shalt thou be buried. Thou and all thy friends to whom thou hast prophesied how? Falsely. God will take care of the end. And when you teach in truth and you live by truth and everybody says bad things about you, just wait. He'll take care of the judgment. And you just do what you're supposed to do. Jeremiah's not going to stop preaching. He's not going to stop trying to get the people to do that which is right. In fact, God says, quit praying for them now. They'll get to that point. We've already seen that. So there's that, and that's what leads him in to the other time when I want to see thy vengeance upon them. Because he's going through a very, very difficult time. So all the riches, and we know that the kings will take out of the temple, and Nebuchadnezzar will take that back to take them into captivity. But why would these people not come back to their land? How long were the people to be in Babylonian captivity? And Jeremiah will talk about that in this book. And it's exactly how long it took. How long were they in captivity? 70 years. And at the end of 70 years, they're going to come back. Well, what can they be? Because these people are already pretty old. And they're not just bored, but they will be ones that will die there because they'll be 70 years, and they're probably at the age where they're not going to make that time. You'll die there. And that's why that's exactly true with those particular people who are mature and leaders at that particular time. And so we see all this unfolding with a broken jar, very symbolic. That's not very difficult to understand that connection. Any comments you might have on that? All right. Let's finish chapter 20 by looking at how he does. This is prose. We'll sometimes have language that's more flowery in like the Psalms and so forth. But you say, he sure does drive home a point real. He kind of repeats himself. Well, you may think that. Well, look how many different ways he does that. It should not bore you. But what is he upset about? Jeremiah cursed the day he was what? Born. Okay, why do we need 5 verses for that? My mother's birthday is today. She's 96, and we always kid her that's the longest day of the year. And then she found out last year it is not the longest day. And so Then all of a sudden, she felt bad then. And then today, it's been hot. It's the longest day of the year. And I said, well, that's the day you're born. And I hope you've had a great day. She's had a great day. But we always just kid her about that. Astros won. They had a long game, too. So it's just fitting for the day. But at the end, victory. That's the key. And Mom, this is a good life. She had a good day. But he cursed the day he was born. Now, how many ways can you express this? Cursed be the man who brought tidings of my father, saying, a man-child is born unto thee, making him very glad. Now that's on the heels of verse 14, wherein my mother bare me, be blessed. The day ought to be a blessing. So let's talk about my mother. But a man who brought the tidings of the Father, he just does that in making, said a man-child is born, making him very glad. Let that man be as the cities which Jehovah overthrew and repented not. Judgment came. He's not repenting of anything that's going to happen to him. He brought it upon them because of their hardness of heart against him. And let him hear a cry in the morning and shouting at noontime. In the middle of the day, early in the morning, there's crying because there's death, pestilence, disease, sword, famine. And the reason he wants to hear it because he slew me not from the womb. What's he saying? They should have killed me when I came forth from the womb. And so my mother would have been my grave. And her womb always great because you didn't bring me into this world. David? Yeah. Yeah. And then just say in verse 18, wherefore I came forth out of the womb to see labor and sorrow, that my day should be consumed with shame. Just live my life, it's full of shame. Because that's what they're saying about me. They put me in stocks. I mean, he looks at it from all angles, doesn't it? And there's not a blessing. It's just the longest, hard day. There's nothing good about the day of my birth. And as you bring out very well, Job felt that. Why do I have to see these days? It'd be better for me to die before I was born. And then the fellow that should have killed me when he came out of the womb, let him see the horrors that are going to come. And what does Jeremiah write? Inspired soul. He writes the book of Lamentations, where he just cries because he experiences what Jerusalem is going to experience. And so there is the pain in his heart. I've been in stocks. He goes to God to commit his charge to him, and there's how despondent he is. And it's when you can go to God, tell him how you feel, exactly how you feel, and leave it to him. It's just a pretty good way to take it off your shoulders when maybe you don't have anybody to share that with. And Jeremiah, he was forbidden to be married, so that kind of happens that way. Any comments on that? Why was that? Because he was exposed to the sorrow and especially the things that are going to be upon the people of God in Jerusalem, because they will go into the punishment from what king from the north is going to come upon them. Does your Bible say Nebuchadnezzar or Nebuchadnezzar? I'm confused. Some of the versions will have, because that's exactly in Hebrew. That was another spelling, but it's still Nebuchadnezzar that we know. But like the American Standard, it gives exactly, you kind of know exactly what's being said, the word is being used, and that's how it's also written. But it's speaking about the same person. So we come in to lesson 6 now with the kings and the false prophets. Now this is chapters 21 through 25, And these first few chapters will, especially 21, 22, is dealing with the kings. And those kings I just spoke about, you're going to see their names brought here that we're going to talk about. And so we're getting ready for that. So we asked the question here in lesson, question number 1. What was Zedekiah the last king before going into captivity? After Josiah? No, he got someone in between, but he's Jeremiah is dealing with that king. One of the, if you say, well, we'll just take the chapters and they'll be in chronological order. They're not. And you'll get all confused. So we can't say, well, this happened then, we're going to try to put it into place. But when he says this, the word which came unto Jeremiah from Jehovah when King Zedekiah did something. What happened to Jehoiakim? We'll talk about him. What happens to Jehoahaz? We'll talk about him. But we're not going to talk about in order the way Jeremiah wants to talk about them. And so we're going to take them the way he does. But in chronological order, I hope you can be moving around. Say, I know, and 2 Kings 24 and 25, you can put them there. 2 of them 11 years, 2 of them are 3 months apart, and then you got Josiah. I got the last 5 kings. And he'll speak more about Zedekiah and Jehoiakim. Why? Because they each reigned 11 years. The other 2 are just 3 months. Turmoil is taking place. And he's now going to take to the point of when Zedekiah did something. So we're asking in this first question, what was he hoping God would do for Judah when he inquired of Jeremiah? That's right. Inquire, I pray thee, in verse 2. And I inquired that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, maketh war against us. Peradventure Jehovah will deal with us according to all his wondrous works, that he may go up from us. Is that God may go up and be our general? Or that Nebuchadnezzar will go up from us? Leave him alone. God, you do your wondrous works. I think that's what he means. You do your wondrous works, and you don't let King Nebuchadnezzar, you do not let him take us and let him go up from us. Get out of here. Now, what king had God done that before of the kings of Judah, where he would say, no, you did it before? What stands out? 185,000 bodies lying on the ground. The king is Hezekiah. And Sennacherib, I'm going to take you. I'm taking the northern kingdom, I'm going to take you, Hezekiah. What happened? God's wondrous works came up, and his angelic host, they killed them all. Delivered them up from us is the concept. And he's wanting that one more time. That's not too bad to do. Yes, sir?
Zedekiah didn't realize that at the previous time, the invading general was mocking God, mocking the people's faith in their God, basically blaspheming God, openly.
Right.
We don't know this is the case here, or it might have been, but the punishment at that time was.
That's right. And what could you add to that? There was the enemy, but Hezekiah was talking to God in prayer. Hezekiah was trying to do what's right. And you got these kings, they're not doing what's right. And yet they want the same results, don't they? And so the reason I say that is because we're getting ready to go in. Why is Nebuchadnezzar there? It's because of you kings. You're not leading the people in the right way. Hezekiah was. And that may be why God does it, and it does do it with them. But the point was, they were defying. That's why the giant goes down with David. That's why idolatrous nations are going down when God steps in. But wondrous works, do miracle, and he's done it before, and he's appealing to that. But the character of the king is the problem that's taking place. So do according to thy wondrous works, and cause, I think, Nebuchadnezzar to go up from us. Not, God, I want you to go up and for us. It says go up from us. Leave us alone. And that has happened before. All right? What was God's response? Let's just, I'm going to begin with verse 3. Jeremiah said unto them, thus shall you say to Zedekiah. So then said Jeremiah unto them, you tell Zedekiah, thus said Jehovah. So you sent your messengers, Pashur, the son of Micaiah, and Zephaniah, the son of Maaseiah, the priest, saying, inquire, I pray thee, of Jehovah for us. So he sends word, you priestly leaders, go back to the king, and you tell him that, behold, I will turn back the weapons of war that are in your hands. Well, when you fight against the king of Babylon, so any weapons they have for war, is that going to work? I want to turn them back. They're not going to work for you. And against the Chaldeans that besiege you, how did nations conquer other nations? They just flew jetliners and jets in there and bombed them. No, they starved them out. They besieged the city and waited till they get hungry enough to either give up or be weak enough, and they're taken. So, hey, we'll besiege you for 2 years, and we're not letting food get in, and that's the slow death, and they'd eat their babies, so the babies wouldn't have to suffer anymore. And you get thinking that's the righteous thing to do. And it's times of horror. There would be the disease that would happen among them. And all of those things happen. So he's going to besiege you, and without the walls, they're going to be first out there, and I will gather them into the midst of the city. Now, is he speaking about the weapons? Kind of like the Alamo, we'll just kind of get in it and we'll defend it when they come over the walls. We'll bring all of our weapons here. Or is that the enemy that's besieging you will be inside your city not too long from now in this warfare? And I think that's maybe what's happening. But you can make up your mind about that. I myself, you got God, you want me to do wondrous works? I myself will be against you with an outstretched hand and a strong arm. You're not going to be able to resist this. Even in anger and in wrath and great indignation. God is a loving God. He's a wrathful God because he's a holy God. And he's sure given them enough warnings from Jeremiah to get on the page with God. I don't want it. I will smite the inhabitants of this city, both man and beast. They shall die of a great pestilence. Disease would take place. Not able to stay clean. Not all the defecation, all the stuff that they're not able to go outside the city and take care of. It's going to be a horrible thing that will happen as they die of hunger. And beasts will be affected. They shall die of a great pestilence. And afterwards said Jehovah, I will deliver Zedekiah, king of Judah, and his servants and the people. So Zedekiah, his servants, which are of his household, and then the rest of the people that he rules over, the people in Jerusalem, that are left in this city from the pestilence, from the sword, and from the famine, in the head of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and into the hand of their enemies, and the hand of those that seek their life, and they shall smite them with the edge of the sword. I thought they survived that. And they're the ones that just still standing. And they'll get the sword. He shall not spare them, neither have pity, nor have mercy. So, was that a real nice message to be sent to the king, Jeremiah? It's the truth. It's the truth. All right, but wonder if you surrender. Notice in verses 8 through 10, he answers that question. Could you tell me, when you talk about his response, what did God say, question 3, would happen to them who surrendered to the Chaldeans? Would they be spared? That doesn't sound like the way we do things. What happened to Alamo? We'll just die to the dead. And that's why my Texas bravery, I want to be godly. And this is how God tells his people to do it. I set before you the way of life and the way of death. He that abideth in the city shall die by the sword, and by the famine, and by the pestilence. But he that goeth out and passeth over to the Chaldeans that besiege you, he shall live, and his life shall be unto him for a prey. They will say, we got captives. Good. That's the way they'll look at it. Got their spoil, but we got the captives to be dishonored as we take them back and disperse them into the empire. Not me. I'm going to fight to the death. Well, it's a way of death and a way of life. God will tell these people after Jerusalem is destroyed and the leader over them, he's assassinated, that King Nebuchadnezzar put in. They said, Jeremiah, you go pray. What should we do? I think we need to get down to Egypt. And God will tell them, no, you stay right there. You stay in Jerusalem. And they said, well, we're going down to Egypt. And they were destroyed. So I want to listen with God in a context that he speaks and put away what I think it ought to be. And if I were a person there, you would probably, you're a coward. Save this wonderful city. But a godly person said, and you hear what Jeremiah said? I'm going to follow the prophet of God. He's kind of speaking right, because there's Nebuchadnezzar, and this is going to be the end. So he tells them, if you want to stay alive, you give in to that. Okay? Now, just to finish this, we're not going to go into detail. He deals with what's going to happen to Jerusalem, where you can give in to the king, because this is God's judgment upon them. You can save your life by going into captivity. But it's touching the house of the king of Judah. You're talking about his own household. Oh, house of David. Execute justice, and so forth. He's trying to say how you can save your house. Again, the king's character in these chapters are the ones that why Nebuchadnezzar is going to win. And they're the leaders. And it's going to affect their servants in their house. It's going to affect the people. It will affect the little children. It will affect everybody in a horrible way. And we'll have to pause there, and we'll pick that Lord willing. Any comments you'd like to add before we break away from this terrible scene of judgment coming upon them? We're going to see that in the next few chapters. And you'll see the king's name. We're going to ask, who is this Shalom? And question number 6. I hope you can figure that one out too. Try to find him in the king's lineage, and we'll answer that as well, Lord willing. Any thoughts? Okay, thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate it.